Cerulean was born into turmoil, born during bitter civil war. This time they feared it would truly mean the end of their civilization. But then, quite unexpectedly, on one remarkable day in particular, the war abruptly ended. What they learned that day shocked them out of all desire to fight. That is where Cerulean's story begins. But such a story cannot be fully appreciated without knowing how they got there first. You see, their journey actually began thousands of years ago. Some said they emerged as survivors of a prehistoric cataclysm, but that largely remained speculation. What is certain is that even their oldest examples of language and art depict the Great Tower. They didn't know much about the tower other than the fact that it was the most visible landmark of Utopia, where they thought all their troubles would end, so they remained ever vigilant for that golden tower upon the horizon. Generation after generation, their lives consisted of marching and fighting. They marched when they agreed about their direction, and they fought bloody battles when they disagreed. Victors led the way as more generations passed in search of Utopia. First they walked, and then they rode animals, until the wheel revolutionized their journey. Carriages and platforms eventually facilitated longer voyages. They progressed. Despite their advancements, some heretics wished to give up and permanently settle. This led to yet another civil war, one of their most notable. That war ended when the traveler arrived, just as the prophecies predicted he would. The great traveler hailed from Utopia itself, assuring their direction was true. Disbelievers voiced their skepticism, but even they were convinced upon seeing the landmarks the traveler told them they would see on their way. The traveler's visit was the perfect catalyst at the exact right moment to spur their mobile civilization into a renaissance of art and innovation. Within the span of a few generations, an industrial revolution replaced beasts of burden with glorious machines, marking subsequent exponential leaps in efficiency. Technicians and engineers enjoyed prestige as the backbone of their society, their genius celebrated as they provided bigger and better modes of travel. Eventually, everyone rode upon a dozen gargantuan vehicles, and during an era of peace, the vehicles were connected, forming a single, massive, mobile city. They were more united than ever before, figuratively and literally. And for another 1,000 years, the city grew, both in technology and size. It became United Megamopolis, the nation of every civilized person in existence. The uncivilized, heretics and criminals, were cast into the wake of United Megamopolis, left behind to face the horrors of solid ground, where they had no choice but to continue their journey on foot. Before they'd ever reach Utopia, however, it was more likely they'd be ravaged by savages, or devoured by wild animals, or who knows what else. Many said that people on solid ground eventually go mad from lack of movement. In truth, they didn't know much about the world beyond Megamopolis, for their direction was always singular. Forward, ever forward. Progress is paramount. Stopping is anathema. That is why the settlements of unmoving savages that sprawled before them were doomed. Oh, they stopped for their earliest encounter with these odd, stationary cities, because it was an unfamiliar moral quandary. But after they decided that the land dwellers' lives weren't worth the detour, it became easier to roll over them. After several more, they thought nothing of it, like stepping on an ant. Despite their unity, a millennium of trudging toward the horizon with no sign of Utopia took its toll on their civilization. The cost was a great war that many feared would destroy United Megamopolis and end their progress. This brings me to the year of Cerulean's birth, when the war suddenly ended, just as it was at its bloodiest apex. They saw the tower. Their direction was true after all. Though invisible to the naked eye, on the clearest of days, with a telescope on the highest building where the planet's curvature was slightly negated, the glorious golden tower could be seen. faded by the atmosphere, yet unmistakable. That discovery was all they needed to stop the violence. In that remarkable moment, the bloody battle became a jubilant celebration. Two grappling opponents shifted their embrace into a loving hug. Almost there, or so they thought. Like the era following the coming of the traveler long ago, they thought their journey would soon end, but it didn't. There was always some preacher shouting that they were living during the last days, but Cerulean himself grew faster than the tower on the horizon. The tower, like a mirage, stayed ahead of them no matter how far they went. Utopia itself must have been moving, which made sense, it was reasoned, for they no doubt shared the enlightened values of Megamobilis. Unfortunately, this meant that they would never reach it unless their scientists and engineers discerned a way to make Megamobilis move faster. So they worked tirelessly, and their ingenuity brought forth amazing discoveries and new branches of science. They went from foot to hoof to wheel to tread to anti-gravity rail to quantum oscillation drive. Despite their acceleration, they couldn't close the gap. Scouts sped forth, but they always mysteriously lost communication with them, and none ever returned. Philosophers questioned how the city was able to get close enough to see it, but no closer. Either Utopia had gained speed or hadn't been moving until Megamobilis got close. In either case, it could mean that Utopia was fleeing from them. Why? The prevailing argument was that it was a trial, and they would reach Utopia only when they were worthy of reaching Utopia. Philosophers who proposed other ideas quickly became an endangered species. There was nowhere to hide on Megamobilis, yet those skeptical thinkers went missing nonetheless. Few of them questioned the consensus anymore. Cerulean served as the Science and Technology Commissioner during their greatest strides toward progress. The tower on the horizon grew bigger than ever during his administration, even visible to the naked eye at one point. Due to the unique timing of Cerulean's birth and his subsequent contributions, people compared him to the great traveler of antiquity, arriving at just the right moment to spur them forward. The comparison always humbled Cerulean. His reputation demanded it, so Cerulean reluctantly ran for president of United Megamobilis. The election, like their history, was bitter and divisive. Cerulean honestly only wished to do what was required to progress. But he was a political outsider, and the traditionalists did everything they could to smear him. Cerulean, introverted, refused to play politics as usual, which was exactly what got him elected. He was just as shocked as his elite, out-of-touch opponents, for his passions were too wrapped up in engineering to understand human nature. Palpable unease inflicted their government after Cerulean's inauguration. This perplexed him. After all, his life's work proved that he would strive to bring them closer to their destination, strive to leave the status quo in their wake and find success. So why the trepidation? The only answer he could imagine was that they preferred the status quo. That was more true than he realized. The truth wouldn't come out until his first top-secret meeting. Cerulean stood before the council members awaiting his briefing on all matters classified. Their faces looked stern, concerned. What was he in for? What did they know? After they told him, he wished he didn't know. He wished he had never ran for office. He wished he could go back to that time of blissful ignorance and concentrate on how to get them moving faster. That was such a simpler time. Instead, he fell to his knees with the weight of their confession. There was no tower. There was no utopia. It was a contrivance, a projection from their own city. Look at how far we came, they told Cerulean, justifying the lie. We're working together and constantly improving our way of life, they said, all in our united goal of reaching utopia. It doesn't matter that the destination isn't real, they assured, because the journey is real, and the journey is what truly matters. Without this common goal, Our civilization would be scattered to the winds, they said, reduced to scraping a living out of the dirt once more, like our savage ancestors. Look at us now, though, floating above the dirty ground, everyone sharing a purpose and finding meaning in their lives as they contribute to a society of precision and harmony, despite our political disagreements. Society was better than it had ever been, all because they strove to solve their common, non-existent problem. The common folk were busy in their work, hopeful in their progress, and the elites were more than happy to rule them, safe in the lie that kept the people under their control. The great traveler of ancient history was yet another lie, a person sent far ahead of the convoy at the start of the war, only to return at a strategic moment to fulfill a prophecy and tell them what was ahead, first in great detail, and then using vagueness fit to placate the masses who saw what they wanted to see. The first sighting of the tower during the year of Cerulean's birth was also a contrivance designed to stop yet another war. And all those brave scouts who set out to reach Utopia never to return found only their deaths by way of remote-controlled destruction. It was all a lie. No wonder every president seemed to change after being elected. No wonder they usually failed to accomplish the quite achievable goals they promised to reach during their campaigns, for those promises were born of ignorance. Now, Cerulean knew the truth of their society, built upon a lie. The council, clearly nervous about how this outsider would proceed with the information, needed reassurance that the secret would remain safe with him, but that would be a lie of his own. Cerulean believed he had to tell that lie if he ever wanted to get out of that meeting alive. So he attempted to beguile them, agreeing that the end justified the means, a tautology, for in this case the end and the means were one and the same. The council didn't seem convinced, but they let him go nonetheless. In truth, Cerulean didn't yet know what he was going to do. Should he tell the people, thereby simultaneously ridding them of their ignorance and their hope? He felt that would be selfish, for indeed even he wished he hadn't learned the truth, and that he could go back to that simpler time of working toward their common goal. Then again, the idealist in him argued that the people had the right to decide their own destinies. Sometimes we don't like what's best for us, he told himself. Is a life spent working for a lie a life wasted? At last, he decided to let the people take their lives into their own hands and decide for themselves what value they would have. No longer would they be devoted to a lie. Henceforth, they will be devoted to themselves and to each other. He would tell the truth. Cerulean decided to reveal the classified information during his first national speech to United Megamobilists. At last, their journey of thousands of years would come to an end. He strategically positioned his security so neither the microphone nor the broadcast could be cut, for the powers that be would know exactly what he was up to from the moment they heard his shaky voice. The speech was somber at first. Cerulean gravely revealed the lie upon which their society was built. He scanned the crowd and found the council members' faces, expecting to see fear there, but saw only disappointment. Cerulean trudged onward, attempting to find new hope for the people, assuring them that they would find their own meanings, and that they didn't need this lie to have happy, fulfilling lives. With each assurance, however, Cerulean was dismayed to sense growing unease. The crowd grew restless. He began to worry for the council members' safety, who, although guilty of perpetuating the age-old lie, didn't deserve to be killed. Yet that is exactly what Cerulean feared would happen. The crowd grew loud and angry. Cerulean barely heard the words coming out of his own mouth. At the finish of his speech, upon his bold demand to finally bring United Megamobilists to a stop for the first time in living memory, much to Cerulean's shock, the people charged at him, leaving the council members completely unscathed. The mob violently seized each of Cerulean's limbs and carried him away, rendering him completely at their mercy, unable to resist and unable to reason with them. As he saw their faces contorted with disgust and fury, he realized only too late the gravity of his unforgivable action. Of course, he knew blasphemy was no longer legitimate, but the people knew no such thing. They were so entwined with the lie that they relied upon it. They'd live for it. They'd die for it. They'd even kill for it. It happened quickly. The rough rope scratched his neck, but that wouldn't matter for long. Suddenly, he felt his body falling, felt his stomach leap into his chest. His fingertips tingled. Then everything went black, and he heard the buzz of angry jeers no more. United Megamobilists trudged onward, to a destination that never was and never will be. Or maybe they had even rolled over it long ago. Regardless, the elites forever reaped their power from the harvest of useful idiots.